And please welcome your host of Strange Oddities Podcast, Matthew J. Haas.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Strange Oddities Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew J. Haas. Welcome to the show, guys. I took a week off from the show to celebrate 4th of July. I think I deserve a little vacation here and there, so I work so hard at the show and trying to entertain you, find people that are watching the show. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. We have two exciting guests for tonight's show. Before I introduce them, as always, guys, you can visit our website, strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. There is a chat room during the show if you'd like to ask some questions for the host or the guests. There's a chat room. It's not much. Go to the YouTube channel, Strange Oddities Podcast on YouTube, and just subscribe. Hit the little bell at the top right corner of the screen on the main YouTube channel page, and just hit subscribe, and you guys can join us during the show, ask questions. I'll try to relay them as best I can. I'll try not to miss everybody. Sometimes it happens, but there's a lot of action in the chat room sometimes. Guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. Hope everybody had a great 4th of July. Guys, we're going to discuss a little bit of the dark side of the paranormal tonight. I welcome two really interesting guests. So without further delay, I don't have just one guest. I have two great guests. So I'm very fortunate to have these guys tonight. Mr. James Annitto has known me for a few years. We go back a couple of years working together in some cases through the Dominion Ministry Network, and even after that, we've worked together at some conferences, and I've been a public speaker, under his wing, and we've connected stayed connected ever since. And I finally get to meet tonight for the first time the other half of James Annitto, Mr. Carl Johnson. Both of these guys are demonologists. James is more of I think, referred to as a clergy kind of person these days, and really respectable of what these gentlemen both do. Mr. Johnson, Carl, you've been featured on different shows on TV, such as Ghost Adventures most recently. You've been on Ghost Hunters in the past. You and your brother have been on that show a couple of times. And you've also worked with the well-respected and people who the widely recognized Ed and Lorraine Warren. I know you've worked with them in the past, so we can talk about that later in the show. But without further delay, guys, I want to welcome Mr. James Annitto, Mr. Carl Johnson, the duo Demonology, as they call themselves, right? If I have that correctly. And guys, welcome to Strange Oddities Podcast. Are you guys ready to have some fun?
Oh yeah, it is going to be fun. I mean, with this topic, how can it not be fun? It can be grim, but it can be fun grim.
Yeah.
You can do.
Yeah, you can make a.
Would it be grimly funny?
We could be very grimly funny, but grimly funny. But no, thank you for having us on tonight.
Yes, it's our pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's an honor. Anytime I have a guest come on the show, I'm very grateful that they can sit, have a nice conversation, entertaining conversation with me for an hour. I'm always thankful. So, I appreciate that, guys. If anybody's listening to the show, I just throw out there really quick, guys, if there's any audio, video issues, let me know, message me, throw a comment in the chat room if anybody wants to go in the chat room and just throw a message up there, let us know how everything is. I try to fix things on the fly, so I'm a very good multitasker. I try my best. Anyway, so let's go with it here, guys. How do I even begin with the two of you guys? Both of you guys have, big personalities in the paranormal field. You guys are very involved. I respect both of you guys a lot. Both of you guys know that. James and I go back a few years, like I said. How about we start a little bit briefly with James, and we can, direct that question to Mr. Carl Johnson, of course. How did you guys start in the field? Like, James, you want to go first? And then we ask that question to Mr. Johnson. How did you start? And then after that, how did you guys, think of hooking up? That would be my next question. How did you guys think of, let's do this together? What brought you guys to pair up?
Well, I think it was this great room that brought us together, isn't it? You know, this room is getting famous,
It is.
maybe more famous than we are because it's been featured on television and
Yeah.
numerous, shows and podcasts. But anyway, how did you first get into demonology? What we would call demonology?
Well,
for better term.
Just for people that before we get, we talk about serious topics.
Before we get serious.
So before we get serious, is that as you just said, he was on a recent Ghost Adventures episode. This room was a part of his interview, so I made a joke about it for people that are wondering that the room is more famous than I will ever want to be.
You got more, well, that was my second episode with Ghost Adventures.
Yes.
Your room got more feedback than my appearance did on Ghost Adventures stuff.
But in all seriousness, though, is I got involved in the paranormal due to spiritual questions about God, and it led me down a path of anthropology research, theology research, evolutionism within Darwinism. So many different aspects of certain different things that made me try to figure out what God was or higher power was. But throughout time, of course, I always had an interest with aliens and, of course, cryptids, or what I mostly known back then was Bigfoot, the Chupacabra, and other certain little things within the cryptid family. But I also was interested in spirits. And I think at one point in my time within my search and answer for what God could possibly be, and I was around 14, 15 years old, is I started dabbling into paranormal investigating on the ghost research aspect of it. I would go into locations, cemeteries, graveyards, places that maybe I shouldn't have been, but I would not be there to do any harm to the place. I was there for research or as a hobbyist with a bunch of friends, seeing what, does ghosts exist? And basically that's really kind of what led me down the paranormal aspect. Never had a haunting, never dealt with it. But what led me down to the demonology aspect is this man right here, and a lot of aptitudes, and his brother Keith Johnson, and of course, regardless of his opinion of Ed, in some format, and I respect his opinion because he worked with him. He knew the man, I didn't. But Ed Warren and the Fable Tales of the Warrens and what they did, and Demonologists was a key book in my childhood as well. So with this man and doing residential cases, and finding my faith when I was in the Army, through an occurrence that I can't question, understand to this day. I just take it as it is, and I take it as a positive thing that took me to a whole new step. So, but yeah, that's really what led me to the paranormal. It was just really the search for a higher power. Have I figured and answered my question out? No, but am I comfortable with where I'm at with my understanding of it? Yes, I am, because I think there are questions out there that can be discovered, such as if there's life beyond this planet. Maybe ghosts will be an answer will be discovered on that, but also cryptids also intrigues me, and of course the people that Carl and I are able to help, and also research on the topic. That's what keeps me going doing it. But yeah, that's what got me into the paranormal. How about you, Carl? That was 15 years ago, and you've 47 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's hear.
I think he's got your number, James.
Yeah, 47 years, people.
Yeah, but a respectable number.
I hope it's respected. I started when I was 2, yeah. Well, I was just waiting to meet you all that time, James. That
Baby.
that first 38 years, I was just waiting to meet you and get together. So actually, my brother and I had, I guess you could call it the privilege from an exploration approach of growing up in a haunted house out in the country setting. It's more built up now. We grew up in the country out in Situate, Rhode Island. And we discovered the house we were living in was haunted. And it was just it seemed almost common to have strange things happen there. But then when we got into our teens, that accelerated, and the house seemed to be a genuinely haunted house. Now, most days, of course, were business as usual. But there were times when furnishings were moved around mysteriously. There were rappings, reverberations on the roof. And I saw the apparition of a woman down in the basement repeatedly. And everybody in the house, my father was kind of in denial about it. Yeah, vivid imagination. But we all had to accede that there was something strange going on in that house, a series of occurrences. It seemed to accelerate when my younger sister and I started to play on that amusing parlor game, the spirit board, the Ouija board.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to throw it in a high gear as far as activity in the house. Now, my brother was interested in it, like spirit communication, but he did not participate. He thought that was wrong. Even at that age, when we were 15 years old, 14 and 15 years old, he didn't want to mess around with that. Maybe that's why I saw the ghost more than he did. Possibly, but we were all experiencing things then.
Right.
So that basically fostered my interest in spirit communication and therefore the paranormal, because back then everything paranormal, supernatural was ghosts.
Right.
And then when I was 17 years of age, my brother and I attended a lecture presented at Rhode Island College in Providence, and the featured speakers were the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, whom we heard, and they were still new to us. So we went there and met Ed and Lorraine, heard them lecture, and I was saying, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Be like him. And actually, they had some audience participation, and eventually Ed Warren called me up on the stage, and I became part of their lecture that night. And later that evening, members of a group based at the college, PIRO, Parapsychology Investigatory and Research Organizations, PIRO members invited my brother Keith and I to join their group, even though we were not registered at the college. We were 17, still our senior year in high school. And we became members and started this paranormal investigation team. And eventually we branched out into residences, went to residential cases where people had a haunted house, because my brother, Keith, placed an ad in a local periodical advertising our group, letting people be aware of us and that we do not charge for our investigating services. And to that effect, we were contacted 3 weeks to the day after my brother placed that ad in a local paper. A lady in Harrisville, Rhode Island, contacted us. Her name was Carolyn Perrin and her husband, Roger. And they invited us to come to their farmhouse out in Harrisville. They had some strange goings on there. So we pulled up into the driveway, and as soon as we went up that gravel driveway, I was like, oh, there's something here. I just feel it in my gut. And there was, I've spoken to her on the phone a couple of times, but there was Mrs. Perrin, a slender woman, 30 years of age. And she looked apprehensive. We didn't know what to expect. She didn't know. They never had a paranormal investigation at their house. So I said, oh, hello, Mrs. Perrin. I was the first one to the door, and I tried to alleviate the tension with some humor. I said, oh, this was before GPS. So I said, we had a dickens of a time finding your house. I saw a man standing in a cemetery. I went up and asked him for directions. He pointed the way, turned around to thank him. He was gone. So here we are.
Oh, wow.
She just cracked up laughing. So that eased any tension. And we did off. Oh, it was an amusing first introduction to the parents. I introduced our team members. And Donna was the case manager. She was a student at Rhode Island College. They're in their senior year. So my brother at that time, we are identical twins. We both had the long hair, and my brother had beyond his shoulders, he had blonde hair parted in the middle. He was wearing, I remember he was wearing a white muslin shirt, and he was carrying a Bible. Now the parents had 4 daughters, and one of them, Nancy, she said to her mother that she saw Keith standing outside, and she said, Mom, Jesus is here. So naturally, we hit it off with him right away. Now, the girls took my brother by his hands and brought him down to the pond, and I started talking with the mother and father, Roger and Carolyn Perrin. And as we were interviewing the parents, conducting the interview process at the beginning of the investigation, Donna and Keith were speaking to Roger and Carolyn. I heard some sounds upstairs where the girls' bedrooms were located. This was early afternoon. And I heard people, it sounded like persons shuffling around upstairs. I heard some noise. I said, excuse me, do you have company upstairs? They said, no, we hear that almost every day. Okay, so I waited for the conversation to recommence, and I kind of backed off and quietly made my way up to the stairs. So I'm looking around up there saying, what is making that noise? It really sounds like some people are walking around up here. I was up there for a couple of minutes when I saw out of my right peripheral vision, I saw a darkness advancing toward me. Reflexively, I turned around, and there was this dark thing coming at me. was the absence of light, just darkness coming at me. My first thought was that there was a fire in the house.
Mm.
And that flash draft, I'm waiting to smell smoke. So it enveloped me and then it just vanished. I didn't smell any smoke. I didn't feel any physical sensation.
Mm.
So I went back downstairs and I gave my brother the look like something's up here.
Right.
Then I went down to the basement. I was the first one down to the parents' basement besides their family. So I'm down there and they had, at that time, there was one single hanging light bulb illuminating the basement. Now I think they have two. And I'm standing down there and all of a sudden that light went off and I'm in darkness. If you can picture an 18-year-old Carl standing in darkness, I said, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I could see where the stairwell was, so I made my way upstairs. And a little while later, we went up to one of the girls' bedrooms where there was a window jarred open. Roger was still there. He said, I can't shut that window. I tried it. No, it was jammed open. What was interesting about that was the rest of the house was sweltering. It was mid-August. And that room was cold, like an icebox. Couldn't figure that out. My brother tried an experiment with provocation, religious provocation, in that he spoke the holy name of Jesus and he recited a psalm from the book of Psalms, the biblical book of Psalms. And that window slammed shut as he was praying, reciting the psalm. Inexplicably, just boom, went down. And also, I think it was Judy, another daughter, she developed 3 welts on her face in tandem with that window slamming. So also we noticed she had marks on her face as if she'd been slapped. So we knew something was up in the house. Now, to us, it was gangbusters, or ghostbusters. Wow, we're really experiencing things. To the parents, it was just distressful because when you're living with that, there's the element of the unexpected. You never know what's going to strike, what's going to happen. So they were unsettled. And we agreed to come back. Another 3-week interval elapsed. The 3 weeks went by. And during that time, I was in contact with Mrs. Perrin. And she would call me 8, 12 times a day, sometimes, updating me on the happenings in that house. I remember one time I was on the phone with her for a solid hour. She called me right back, told me she was slicing an orange on her kitchen counter, and it seemed like blood seeped out of that orange and dripped onto her feet, some red substance.
Yikes.
So she wanted us to come back. Actually, I think it was about 2 more weeks before we came back from our first visit. And when we came back, what a change in that family. Mr. and Mrs. Perrin. Roger, who had been kind of detached from this, the activity there, he had scratches, visible scratches on his forearms he had woken up with. Starting to bother him.
Wow.
And Carolyn Perrin, oh my word, it looked like she hadn't eaten or slept since we saw her. Just something was wearing it. It's like the house was digesting the occupants.
Right,
That's
right.
the impression I got. We knew Ed and Lorraine Warren. I was acquainted with them. I'd kept in touch. I'd even lectured with them a few times. They went on their lecture circuit with them. They found out I could speak publicly and about these subjects. So we placed a call. It was Donna who called Ed Warren. And then a little while later, I was on the phone with him. And not only were they willing to be consulted about this case, we thought we could benefit from their extensive experience. They wanted to come and see the house. So I said, oh, goody. Now we're really inspired some confidence in this family we're helping.
Right.
Ours was an investigation, a scientific investigation.
Sure.
The Warrens commenced an intervention because they were convinced it was a demonic haunt. We were not. We just knew activity was happening there. So I said to Ed, I said, you'd like our case notes? And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. Send them over to me. I said, no, we are going to be working together on this case, this situation. Oh, indeed we will. So it was September 1973. The Warrens pulled up in the driveway. I and Carolyn showed them around the house because I was familiar with the house then. What a good time that was. And in fact, I don't have it with me, but there's a picture of me standing next to Mrs. Warren and Donna, the case manager. Now, in later years, Lorraine Warren denied we were ever, especially with the release of the movie The Conjuring. She said they were the only investigators on the scene at that time.
Oh.
Proves, she's quoted as saying that, but that photograph alone proves we were there.
Yeah.
So we thought, oh, well and good. We're on the way to really, an advanced investigation. We're going to learn from this. We didn't hear from Carolyn Perrin for another 3 weeks.
Wow.
Getting to be the beginning of October, We're not hearing from them. We were disappointed. All we could say, we had a team meeting. We said, well, either the Warrens are helping them and they're successful in helping them, or it's an intense situation and they don't want to be bothered. Well, eventually, Carolyn Perrin placed a call to me. She apologized for being out of touch, and she told me that the Warrens informed them, Carolyn Perrin and the family, that they could do no good unless they were the only paranormal investigators on the scene.
Wow.
They said, we were just a bunch of college kids. We just get in the way. They had to use their experience and clear out the demon, which I think it was a little premature adjudicating that as a demon haunting. There was a seance, a kind of infamous seance conducted in that house. Lorraine Warren was famous for advising people, you must never try to contact the dead. She was clairvoyant. She was quite practiced at conducting seances. So against Roger Perrin's advice, they conducted a seance. The Warrens held that seance in the house, and from what I heard, I was not present for it, but I've spoken to eyewitnesses. At one point, it went terribly wrong. Carolyn Perrin seemed to be taken over, and she was a susceptible person to the house's influence. I could see that from the way she was losing weight. She seemed to be taken over by some invasive entity, speaking in a voice not her own. And then Carolyn's body was propelled out of her chair, flew into a next room. Ed Warren, went and blocked Roger's way. Roger got up and tried to, help his wife up. Ed stood in the way and said, you must never touch the possessed. Well, of course, Roger reacted to that because, for one thing, he's standing in the way when Roger wants to help his wife.
Sure.
And he pronounced her being possessed.
Oh.
So Roger Perrin had a quick response. He struck Ed, knocked him down, and that was the end of their association. So it's not exactly like you see portrayed in the movie.
Sure. No, a lot of
the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just sure, there's a lot of people that don't know your connection, like you and your brother's connection to the Perron family, before all that, took off, and I'm glad you shared that with us. Thanks for sharing that with us.
I'm just saying, like a police report, fact. This was
Right.
my perspective on what was happening there.
Right.
No emotion or bitterness or resentment.
Right.
It's just how things happen then.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's funny that we mentioned this because I told James actually next weekend we actually have it rented out. We're gonna actually be investigating the Conjuring, the farmhouse next weekend. So
be careful. I know you be careful when you get there.
Yeah.
A lot of loose boards.
But we may be calling you guys. Who knows? I don't know what to expect out of that location so far. So I'm trying to go in with a clear, focused mind and not try to persuade myself.
Nobody really knows what to expect. That's the beauty of it. Nobody knows what to expect. You might get something wild, something with real personality.
Right.
Nothing at all, maybe.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, that happens.
Sometimes.
I think the house is the haunting. The house. It was built in 1736, and I think in the many decades it's been standing there, it's developed its own personality. Some persons it likes, lets them know. Some people it doesn't.
Yeah.
And people are experiencing, residents and guests are experiencing the same ilk of phenomena we did back in 1973. That team out of Rhode Island College did. People are getting the same things there.
Wow, interesting. I just want to do a couple of quick shout outs. We have a couple of people in the chat room, believe it or not. Want to thank Mr. Brad M for tuning in. Thanks, guys. And Ganyak Paranormal, good friends of mine that listen to the show each week. Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez, they're known as Ganyak when they put their two last names together. So it's pretty inventive of them to invent Ganyak Paranormal out of that. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Later in the second half of the show, we'll take questions. So right now, we were talking a little bit of the influence that, Mr. Carl Johnson and his brother had, with Ed and Lorraine Warren, the experiences they had with them at the famous Conjuring House, which is now known as the Farm on Round Top Road. We're talking a little bit about how these two guys paired up. Guys, that's my next question. What brought you and James Annitto together? What made you guys say let's pair up and do something, and what got you guys together?
We met on a subway trying to pick each other's pockets. But we started to talk.
Yes, we did.
That was a nice
I
thing.
want to steal from you.
Oh,
I
I
want to
was
steal from you.
yeah,
We'll be friends.
yeah, we got a team. How about
Let's
that?
do it. Oh, we like demonology. Cool.
That's the legend
Um,
behind the truth. Yeah, well, actually, what happened when James and I, you were on the cusp. You were with a team in Rhode Island
I was.
Paranormal.
No, the name was Ghosts.
Ghost at that time.
It was Rhode Island Paranormal Society, what Andre Cord was a member of, but he had left Rips after the episode Demon Attack,
Yeah.
and we had found a group called Ghosts, which
That-
was
yeah.
abbreviated for Ghost
So
Hunting
Rips
Supernatural
preceded Ghost.
Yeah, Rips preceded Ghosts.
And that's how James and I met, because we had these friends. We were on each other's peripheries, and I knew of him and he knew of me, but we hadn't met at that time. But then James, unfortunately, joined a group with which I was associated. I was a founding member of Beyond the Veil Paranormal Research. I was based in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and for a time, James was he started off as our tech manager, and we had some good investigations. Then life just kind of pulled us apart, but we would basically stay in touch. We'd go some months without speaking, not deliberately, but we heard of each other and our individual exploits. And eventually people more went their ways. The group lacked the cohesiveness to keep it together. So the people moved away, it disbanded. So I was a member of my brother's team, which is still extant, near New England Anomalies Research. So
Cool.
and then James and I started to see each other at events. I
Yeah.
spoke at a talk you were giving. I was your guest.
Yeah.
I said, this is kind of good. We have similar ideas. Then we were brought together June of last year at the Payne House in the Captain Payne House in Coventry, Rhode Island, a haunted site. And Ken DaCosta had an event there.
No, I had an event.
That was your event. I didn't know if Ken sponsored.
Ken
Ken stitched it together.
Ken runs the Pain House,
Yeah.
thankfully, and through him, of course, we're able to run.
And what did you
events.
call that event?
A night of pain.
A night of
A
pain.
night of pain.
So I said, he's calling it a night of pain. I gotta go to this. It's James Annitto. Okay, I'm definitely going. So my dear friend Elise, I went, and Elise, who is now the director, actually that was around the time, like a month into it, after we formed Panorama Paranormal, and the name, just as it connotes, handle a whole array of topics and subjects. When you say paranormal, that simply designates anything out of the realm of what's standardly accepted by academia. So we'll investigate anything if it's anomalous. So Elise and I attended, and there's James. We had a delightful time.
Mm-hmm.
Then I saw James again at Ocean State Paracon last July, which unfortunately
We spoke together.
we spoke together. We can't do that now because COVID has shut down so many things, and we still can't do Paracons. But James and I spoke there, and
With your brother Keith.
and with my brother Keith Johnson, and several colleagues were there that I love to see. And so that was the time that Elise and I officially debuted Panorama Paranormal at our booth. So, and we also met up at the Massachusetts Paracon, Mass Paracon,
Which is basically the birthpoint of dual demonology and basically our reunion of working together. And of course, Elise, who has spoken about, the director of Panorama Paranormal, is also the director and the manager / scheduler / everything. She's the glue of dual demonology. Without us, we double book everything.
Yeah, she's indispensable in more ways than one. She's supposed to be.
But Mass Paracon, ran by Sam Beltrusis, had the pleasure to speak on demonology, and because I always like to go above and beyond for Sam, I think that Carl and I were starting to talk again more frequently, and Carl is somebody I look up to very much, so I would call him my first mentor, and I do believe he's a walking encyclopedia. And there's so much to learn from him, but vice versa too. There's things he learns from me, and there's a lot I learned from him. So I thought, okay, maybe let me invite Carl, and I'll invite Elise, who I became acquainted with and very close with, and I said, let me invite them to Mass Paracon, which was in the Berkshires, which is a beautiful area. And Carl and I spoke for the first time in like 9 years.
Spoke together
because we had
an audience.
Yeah, we had spoken together before in the library many years ago, and Beyond the Veil Paranormal.
Yeah.
So this was the first time after like 9 years.
He's speaking of like the first time in all those years that we had lectured
We
together.
lectured together.
I mean, it's not that we didn't
Right.
speak.
No,
Well, I'm not sure about this, James.
Spoke at the
We
convention.
can speak.
But everybody was.
Oh, it was so well received.
It was well received, and there's one thing that I've always wanted, and the one thing that I've always come across, and Carl maybe did so back in the earlier days, but when with paranormal, how rampant it is nowadays, and so many people's opinion, growing up and getting involved within the field of demonology, I always had people that would shoo me away and think I was in it for nefarious reasons. But the one thing that I've always wanted to do is always act on a level of synergy and unity, and work together and learn from people, because I don't know everything. And I know, of course, the books written by philosophers and historians sometimes are opinionated. So I want to learn from other people from different points of views. And Carl's a different point of view. And so aren't so many other people's opinions in demonology. And within the whole spectrum of the paranormal have different opinions. And of course, scientists and medical doctors and stuff like that have their opinions on it. So I want to get all the opinions out there, and that's my viewpoint. So one thing that I wanted to do and have always wanted to do is I do believe the paranormal would be a pseudoscience. Sometimes I think it's laughable, and I admit that 100%. But the one thing I don't think people really understand is theology in the debate versus theology and science. Theology is a science. People tend to forget that. And within theology, there is demonology or angelology, which demonology incorporated from. But I wanted to, for a long time, make demonology something that was reputable, something that could have a structure to it. And you know, there have been so many great people that have come forth, including this man right before me.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make do without demonology something that was a possibility of there being an ability to make this legitimate. And with Carl's extensive background and my background and my tenacious nature of wanting to learn, and same with Carl, because you know this
Quest
man,
for learning.
the quest for learning, is we both have that ability and that willpower. He's like a great partner, because there's people you can partner with and they don't have that equal willpower, that tenacity to want to legitimize something, and he does as well. So with that,
That's our mission, yeah.
with that union, do what demonology was created, and Elise, who is a key component, and you know she is a historian and a president of a historical society in Rhode Island.
Yeah, she's president of the Johnston, Rhode Island Historical Society.
So with that in itself, though, is she's a key component with history, especially when it comes to our cases.
She's a terrific researcher.
So it was a perfect cohesion of everybody, or
the perfect storm, you could say.
storm,
Yeah.
Perfect storm. There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
He's the well-spoken one. There it is. I can't speak.
Yes, I can say that Elise is indefatigable. You know,
Yeah,
indefatigable. Yeah.
You know,
I said indefatigable.
Yeah.
And it was James who came up with the title, Demonology, spelled in the King James parlance. You know, it's pronounced as demonology, but it's Daemonologie. So a little different on our letterhead.
Right. Very creative, I have to say.
Well, you need something that, you know, and not to say it's for attraction. You know, the Cartesian monks, when they wrote a book, never put by author. They put by the Cartesian monks, even if it was one Cartesian monk. So in that same repertoire, even though it is Carl Johnson and James Annitto would do with demonology, it's something attractive, but it attracts to the nature that, even though there's two, it's still the attraction that it is about demonology, not just about Carl and James. So that is my method of it as well. The Cartesian monks, which anytime you read their material, it's not about them, it's about the material they wrote.
It's the method to your madness.
Yeah.
However, we do put our picture together up on Facebook and YouTube.
Well, we have to. Yeah. Well,
there would be non-entities if we don't do that.
Yeah. Plus, we are two good-looking men, and you know,
it's rubbing
we
off on
attract
me.
all different aspects. You know? But in all seriousness, though,
Too late for that.
it's In all seriousness, though, it is about the message. And the
that's
idea.
our mission, to
And-
legitimize demonology, show it as a science. Now, I have my definition of demonology, a demonologist. Demonology is the systematic study and lore of the cultural traditions of wicked spirits. Now, this is where you're looking at the boogeyman, wicked spirits. But this can be a scientific study. It can be organized. It has a place in our culture and in our science, actually.
Yeah, and truly, why the paranormal field is represented as a pseudoscience by many scientists, and in my opinion, myself, even though I'm a paranormal investigator, is that we abandon the scientific method so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that demonology or even paranormal investigating can incorporate the scientific method to 100% degree, but that requires multiple different studies and multiple different things. And
it's not an easy discipline.
And not to say that we are better than anybody else, but as demonologists, we do seek that knowledge. So we kind of, even though I'm not good at speaking the English language,
you're doing pretty good. You're holding your own.
We do, at the same fact, look for other things. We research theology, anthropology, history. We do attempt to reach certain levels of different things, try to be a jack of all trades.
You can say things like epistemology, but then you'll massacre like those and
you know what it is,
adjectives and all that.
When you're born with a speech impediment, sometimes it just never goes away. You just learn how to control it, but it still shines.
Well, you don't seem. I know.
Well, it's in the big words. It's in the big words.
You would never think that. Yeah.
You can handle the first 5-syllable word, and then maybe have trouble with the next.
Yeah, it is what it is. Hey, I can write a mean paper. I just can't say a good sentence. There you go.
All right, guys. I have a question in the chat. If you don't mind, real quick. Actually, it's from Josie James. My wife. She throws a question. Yeah, she throws a question. I guess it could be for both of you guys. You both want to answer it. What was the most scariest case that you guys have dealt with or had? Whether it be just a scary case or an exorcism, is there something scary that you have that you've had an experience with?
Yeah, and I would say my experience was my first possession case. Everybody wants to hear new stuff. Sometimes they hear, why don't you have any new experiences? Well, unfortunately, I don't come across demons as much as people think they do. It's been many years since I've come across a true demonic case. So, but I would say my most scariest is definitely my first possession. And why I say that is because before that, I truly never believed in demons. I thought they were a conceivement of the mind in all capacities. Even though I believed in God, that doesn't mean that I can believe in God and still not believe in demons. There's many Christians that do so, and many priests within many different churches, not even just the Catholic Church, that don't believe in the concept of demons. They believe in angels, but not demons in that concept. So within that, I didn't believe in demons. And second of all, I was called upon a psychologist to come in. And usually I call the psychologist in to review the person because I have a red flag. It's not usually vice versa.
But one time.
That one time.
Yeah, it's quite unusual to have a psychologist call upon a person of your nature.
Well, the person knew my background, so they were doing what I think is the logical thing, is getting as many people as you can in the boat, and somebody that specializes in that specific thing maybe researches it more adequately than a psychologist does, even though possession is in the DSM-5, which is the current edition. It is a psychological disorder. But demonic possession is a whole nother reality.
Sure.
To me, it really happens and exists.
Well,
and it's a possibility.
You can approach it as a psychological malady.
But when you see this preternatural occurrences,
need to allow for the preternatural.
Yeah.
And not a lot of clinicians do that.
Yeah, because when you see the preternatural thing, it tends to scare you. And
you have to rule a lot of that stuff out first. Yeah.
So your scariest case?
It was definitely my first possession case because it really, at the end of the day, though, and not to get too much into the details of it because I know we have a short amount of time, but basically is that made me realize demons were a possibility and demons do exist in a way because I do really believe that was demonic possession, or what I would formally call transient possession. That is the technical term for it, transient possession. And instead of it like making me question my faith, it actually made my faith stronger, because it actually made me believe that, okay, if demons do exist, then that solidifies that there is this higher power, God. So that it was something that was like, it was scary, but it was also a great bump that I had to come over in my life to understand certain things.
Sure.
How about you, Carl?
How about you,
Yeah.
Carl?
That's excellent. It's fascinating. Well, you might think it's that house in Harrisville, and that certainly had its moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say my most riveting, fascinating case, there's a toss-up between two, but I'd have to give that to a case I addressed not too long after my involvement in the Perron's house, was a case of full-blown demonic possession, which occurred in Providence, Rhode Island. Something about Rhode Island, huh?
Mm-hmm.
The subject was a boy, 14 years of age. He was undergoing what seemed to be some type of malady, like an epileptic fit, except that his uncle told me that he was being taken over by something. Something was speaking through him when he'd have these seizures, these fits. Now, I attribute, he's 14 years of age, it's transitional time, he's an adolescent, and it commenced when a year before was wandering through a cemetery on the west end of Providence, found a glove, I think it was a woman's glove, on the pathway, and he picked that up and brought it home with him. Well, the glove vanished, but that's when things started. I was invited to spend the night to observe him. Not that I have any clinical degree, but they knew I had a reputation even then as an investigator who would stand his ground. So I agreed to stay overnight, and I was reclining on a sofa adjacent to that boy's bedroom, and they're upstairs in this 3-story house. So it's about 1 a.m. and I started to drift off, almost going to sleep. Suddenly I was startled awake. I heard a blood-curdling scream. That was a shrill scream. So I got up, fiddling through to find the wall switch, turn the light on, the overhead light. Now, as soon as I got the light on, boy's bed, I had to look at the door because that's where the screams were from, where they were emitting. His door just flung open on its own, and his body came out of that room. It was spinning. He was careening against the walls.
Oh, jeez.
He was being tossed around by an invisible force. It was fascinating but startling. I stood there transfixed. What are you going to say?
Yeah.
Do. Then he did a backwards flip and landed onto the couch where I'd been reclining. Glad I wasn't still reclining there. He started to jump up and down, and this deep guttural laughter came out of his throat.
Yikes.
I could explain if he had some kind of seizure, like that could incite such behavior, but how his body was being tossed, that was
scary.
inexplicable and horrifying. One thing to talk about, another thing to witness it. So then he flung himself at me. I tried to restrain him without injuring him, so I put my weight on him. I was my normal 200 pounds, and I leaned on him. He just pushed me right off. Then he suddenly, as quickly as this episode came on him, he came to himself, but he was shivering and crying and calling for his uncle. This was genuine. So family members came in, and we decided to arrange an expulsion, which in a sense is a form of exorcism, not an exorcism, but driving out the spirit. It's not the Ritualis Romano.
Which is used by the Roman Catholic
Roman
Church.
Catholic Church, yes. But clergy was present. This transpired a week later. We were down on the first floor of this 3-story house, and an altar was set up, and the boy was sitting next to it, looking composed, or rather nervous, apprehensive, and chairs, and I was in the center. As I said, there was some clergy there. There was a sister and a pastor of a church. So they were chanting a prayer. Then when they stopped, that's when things got hairy. The floor shook. It was as if a truck was going by or there was an earth tremor, but it was neither of those. The house groaned, the floor shook, reverberated. Then it became eerily silent, and my chair, with me seated in it, went back several yards across the room to the wall and
Holy
back.
cow.
I hardly had time to be startled. I thought somebody was pulling my chair.
Jeez.
And the chair goes back. Then the boy fell to the floor and started to go through his gyrations.
That's
What
crazy.
it did during the next about 2 hours, which is fairly indescribable. A lot of things happened. We were trying to cast the spirit out. Now, I just wanted to leave the house. I said, I don't belong here. I don't know what I'm doing.
You had a fight or
What am I
flight.
supposed to do? Why are these people looking at me to have some kind of solution?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fight or flight, But I knew if I left that house, I wouldn't be able to go back to another situation. What's frightening is the element of the unexpected. You don't know what's going to happen.
No, you don't.
Now, again, you could say it was psychologically based, but when prayers were offered, and my brother was present, when he said the name of Jesus, religious pictures, iconography would tip over or fly off the walls. It was happening on cue. I got doused with a bowl of holy water. It didn't hurt me though. And the most challenging moment of that expulsion procedure was when I started to, very suddenly, I felt this onrush of emotion. It was alien to me. I felt tension, anger,
Some influence.
preponderance to violence. I felt like I was being influenced. Now I just concentrated on my own sense of myself, and it left me shaken. But whoa, what was that? It's like I had a drug in me or something. Then I could feel the tingling in the back of my head. As soon as it left me, this invasive thing went into a girl, or seemed to go into a young woman in the next room. Because as soon as it left me, she fell on the floor and started to pull her hair.
Yikes.
So I stuck with it. I held on to him. I hugged him, and I said, "This is going to pass. It's going to be all right." And that was, to my surprise, it was successful.
Right.
He wasn't bothered again after that night.
Well,
he had one more instance about a month later. His family were driving by. They went by a Catholic church, a cathedral in Providence, and he started to scream. It was like a flashback for him. But after that,
probably.
After that, no more episodes. I mean, I'd say completely normal, which this is normal, But he was even after that. He never had any recurrences of that.
Wow.
So I knew it was successful. Whatever we did and why ever it was successful, that we commanded the thing to leave, and apparently it did.
Well,
that was my hair-raising case.
Sure. All I can say is that sounds really intense and terrifying.
I know, I get intense talking about it, because it's replaying in my mind.
Right.
And all I have now is eyewitness testimony to it.
Yeah.
But it was freaky at the time.
Yeah. I just have to say, Carl, I love the way you share your stories, because just watching you and your demeanor in the chair, just how you tell them, and you're almost as if you're there with you.
Well, in my mind, I am there because decades ago, it's still a vivid memory. I just wish I had photographs from them. But then again, what would photographs be? They show us standing around.
Right.
I don't think they'd be too interesting.
Yeah, we could just put mouth up to the faces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were 2 times. I had 2 experiences where my chair went back with me in it.
Never had that experience.
It's freaky when it happens. It happens so fast.
I'll see it when I feel it.
You
could one day.
stick with me long enough. Maybe you get lucky. Maybe in that house in Harrisville, Rhode Island, Roundabout Road.
Oh, I hope that doesn't happen to me.
Maybe.
Well, we had that table tipping session that was pretty interesting, but I still don't know what to take of that.
You're pretty skeptical. Skeptic is a loaded term, by the way. Now,
well, I understand how it works. When you understand how spiritualism, not all spiritualism, because there's real spiritualism. I know some spiritualists that I believe really have abilities and they can use tools, but a lot of people that use spiritualism or spiritualistic practices, they're fucks. But I'm not saying that it was that night because I respect those people, but I've researched so much in divination and the practices on how to fake it. So I'm always going to be skeptical.
By the way, James said FAUX, not
that F word.
I don't know how clear your reception is here.
But in that same token, even though I don't think it was fake that night that we did it, I still believe that the human mind is capable of a lot of things, and sometimes we put some perception into something.
Well, it makes sense if you say it's the spirit.
Well, I believe I truly believe psychokinetically, if we put enough perception in something, something can happen.
I definitely think we can project a lot of things, like from our own mind.
I truly think that's a lot of the things that we deal with. To be honest with you, because if to be honest, if you never believed in ghosts, what is the percentages that you actually will never experience?
Oh, let's not be honest. I'm so sick of honesty.
Seriously.
Honest every darn time we
It's
talk.
true though.
I know it, yeah. Now, what I was going to say about Elise, I would refer to her, and other people are referring to her as a realist. A skeptic. Well, everybody wants to think they're skeptical. I think to me, skeptical means I'm too smart to be fooled by this, but I still believe in ghosts. You know? Like I know somebody that prides herself on being very, very skeptical. Well, I think everybody wants or purports to be skeptical. That just means you're slow to believe, but it has a bad connotation. I know people. I do. I still know people who discount any belief in ghosts or the paranormal. Well, ghost is a loaded term too, but some people they'll always get the last word in this, a classic skeptic, even if that last word is, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. No, I've witnessed it. I've seen these things. I've experienced them. I don't know what causes them, but I have experienced the preternatural. Come on. Yeah, interestingly, many of these people accept fundamental creationism, where God clapped his hands and brought the universe into existence, but they can embrace that. But talk about a ghost opening a drawer, no, that don't happen.
Well, I do, and this is not to be judgmental, but I do love, because there's so many different theories out there. Like,
that's what keeps it interesting.
I have my theories, but I'm also open to the thousands of theories that I've read since, not even before even Harry Price, Charles Babbage, Charles Dickens, people like that wrote about ghosts, and like those are long theories, and it's been going.
Try to combine them and make some sense of them.
What I find funny is people that believe in ghosts but don't believe in anything higher power or anything beyond
you get that too.
Like, so it's there's so many different conceptions and misconceptions.
You know what I've synthesized and combined my theories. I've amalgamated them, and what it is dunno, D-U-N-N-O. It's the great dunno. You can observe phenomena. You can theorize about what causes it, but
I love that.
Demons spring from hell? Do they reside in sulfurous caverns, subterranean caverns?
Don't know.
Don't know.
But in what we do though is, we can take as much as of a scientific approach as we can. We can check the air. We can get them psychologically, medically tested.
Take as many readings and measurements and tests as we can.
We can take as many things as we can to see it, and multiple times to see if there's a recurring thing, and then we could present that and see where it's at.
Sure.
If we see a psychologist and they go through 3 different clinical tests, because usually that's a good evaluation. Multiple people observing someone, and they're having these fits. At least you're going through the natural steps. Because I really not to interrupt you. I really truly believe that 99% of the things that we deal with are natural, and then that 1%, if that, is preternatural. Because if it was the paranormal, it wouldn't be happening every day. It is.
That's why it's called para.
Normal. Okay, that's
why it is heavy normal.
Come on.
Come on. It doesn't. It's not. It can happen every day, but it's in that same token though. It's not like nothing can occur that stimulates something very similar. Like I talked about spores and respiratory issues and hallucinations. Like
it gets complicated.
It does. Yeah.
You have to look for all that stuff, especially when you're dealing with people, because if you come in somebody's house and they have a mold issue,
you gotta get back and they can't see you, James.
If they have a mold issue, and you tell them you have ghosts in their house.
Or mold?
Mold.
Little
mold.
Black mold.
Oh, black mold.
I forgot the actual technical name of it because there's many different black molds, but it's the.
Well, you posted it a while ago.
Yeah, I can't whittle it off right now, but black mold still it creates hallucinations. But what happens because somebody's house they're dealing with health issues? You have somebody that pulls that trigger on using the ghost fast, and they're being affected by the spores there too because they've been there
You
multiple
mean if
times.
somebody corroborates them like, being haunted, but it
Yeah.
might be a physiological cause?
Sure.
So, but that
Yeah.
you have to take those precautions when you're dealing with people. And I can't say I always have done that, but I've learned over time that you need to do that because when you deal
Yeah.
with people, it's like what happens if you had it in your life? Who would you want to come into your house? Would I want an unlicensed plumber to come into my house, an unlicensed electrician to come in my house? We don't have licensure, but we do have people that do know how to use common sense and do know how to use other people's specialities and work with people instead of saying, "Oh, I know what a ghost is."
Yeah.
So, you know, you can use that common sense.
Sure.
So I've kind of adapted to say, what would I want? What would I want in my house? I would want these people analyzing every little detail to figure it out. Because if it isn't ghosts, I want a solution because I'm sick and tired of seeing this thing every day.
Yeah.
You know?
There's actually a really good question in the chat by my wife again. Actually, I think this is a really great question to ask you guys. Can say if there's a potential demon possession that you guys come across, is it that they can just kind of pick on anybody? Do they have to give it permission to kind of possess a human body, or like invite it, kind of, or is it like a random target?
Oh, I think there has to be some level of invitation, a welcome mat thrown out. I think there are people who are incapable of being demonically possessed. It's just not going to hit everybody. Some people, I wouldn't even say they have a resistance. They're just not the kind of person that their psychology could permit that. Yeah. And once somebody exceeds to the possibility of demonic possession, then they're vulnerable because they can believe it's happening. Then you get that intermingling of the psychological and the preternatural.
Sure.
And what gets difficult is it's hard to replicate, an experiment. The results of an experiment. Scientifically, you're supposed to be able to perform an experiment and get the same results.
Yeah,
but
right.
Paranormal, the ghost isn't always going to show up. Usually, it's not going to. But yeah, I think there are some people that are prone to it, and some people that just would not. But there are no rules against somebody who's emotionally disturbed or has a repressed psychological conflict and trauma. That person should be left alone. Leave that poor person alone. They got enough problems. But sometimes the demon or the haunting is a projection of that inner conflict. It's imprinted, it's projected, and that gives them confirmation that their house is haunted. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying that's its origin, and it creates a demon. I was saying about demons coming from these sulfurous subterranean caverns. That's what I was brought up to believe. That the demons issue forth, the minions of the devil. Now, I think every one of those creatures we call a demon, I think if you collectively, they could all fit on the head of a pin because they're not physical in the sense that we understand. I think they're two-dimensional and they're on plates, they're projected, and they can appear as three-dimensional. Interestingly, a lot of them, when demons manifest, they look like they're anthropomorphic. They have arms, legs, torso, but they're just distorted. Sometimes they're just darkness. The room gets dark, or a section of the room gets dark. To me, that's a demon in its more pure form.
So you're saying basically a demon's like a quasi particle that is spiritual and basically can manifest into certain other people's reactions of what it is. I think a perfect example of that for people that don't understand what Carl just said, because
I'm not sure Carl understands what Carl just said.
No, you do. I understand quasi particles and stuff, but that's quantum theory, guys, by the way. But what I'm saying is that a good representation of that in pop culture is it. It's not necessarily a demon, but he is this interdimensional being, which could be influenced on the same level as a demon because they are known to be as celestial beings, right? So celestial is beyond this world, just like an interdimensional being is of another dimension.
Maybe they're ultra-terrestrials more than extraterrestrials.
Maybe they are. But in that same format, it plays on the fears of people. And in that same fashion, a demonic entity sort of does that, either if it is through that person's emotion or understanding of what to manipulate to that person to seduce them. Like Carl did say that it is an invitation, even though it might not be like as
A willful, volitional. They
Willful.
may not say, come into our house.
but it could be
Right.
it could be as simple as I can't do this anymore, and that there's enough of
A
it.
resignation. A
Right,
statement,
yeah.
Maybe somebody utters a statement of resignation. I give up. I surrender.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it could,
By darker forces.
and it couldn't even be of a spiritual sense. It could just be of a mental thing that's being said because they are being oppressed, and they might not condone it to be something spiritual. And most people that are being affected by a demonic entity through oppression and then at the point of possession don't really necessarily know that they are being affected. Usually, it's an outside source that reaches out, and usually that's how you can also tell most of the times.
As an intervention.
Yeah, if you're dealing with legitimacy, because usually the person that's possessed, unless they've been dealing with it for years and they came back, usually they won't know they're possessed unless they kind of puzzle pieces together and start asking why they lost time, why they moved like this.
That's an indication of oppression and possession. When
Yeah,
they start
right,
losing
right.
time,
Yeah.
it's vacuous. There are parts of their life that are missing, hours here and there.
Yeah.
That's
Actually, you guys want to hear something really cool in the chat room? We have someone under the, I guess, username is Wave Function, watching from Sandia National Laboratory, Office of Scientific Research and Development, Thermal Test Complex. Thank you, sir. I think that is awesome.
You have him on our team. Yeah, we could use you.
we'll pay for all your meals.
You probably like that quasi-particle talk.
Yeah.
Nice. We have a question from Ganyak Paranormal guys. If you guys could stay on a little bit longer, if you don't mind, that'd be great. 'Cause we really got a lot more questions going on here. Not only from myself, but in the chat as well. Yeah, we have from Ganyak Paranormal. Real skeptics look for truth. Pseudo skeptics are agenda-driven, are in fact believers, but believers in adverse position, and use the term skeptic because carries intellectual status in socially.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm too smart to be fooled. I'm a skeptic.
Yeah.
For those country, but I'm a skeptical one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a skeptic, but I'm in the field.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I can understand that. You could be into something to disprove it, and I guess it can. I guess some people would say that has a volition to it. Is that the word for volition? To it, but sometimes I think there isn't a bad way to try to disprove either, because sometimes when you try to disprove, you find more answers, and that with God, that's what happened to me. So I'm not against the people that want to try to disprove, because sometimes they unlock some things that maybe that they kind of figured out what they wanted to answer and they got it, and it helps everybody else out, because sometimes the people that really doubt dig deeper than the people that believe, because the people that believe are more gullible, to be honest with you.
I think offering healthy skepticism and constructive skepticism.
Taking a balanced view.
Any person that's negative ain't the greatest of people, but there are skeptics out there that I get it. But no, skepticism is a healthy thing when
it's balanced.
When it's balanced, correct.
Don't be too soon to believe. Don't say like your house is haunted.
Well, I think
and
it's not the cause. And this is not towards anybody, but there's too much gullibility, and I was gullible when I was younger in this field. I thought everything was more than what it was. I was definitely gullible, but there's too many people that are gullible to every reaction to certain things, and it's sad to me because
even with people who seek out our help,
yeah,
sometimes you find that
you give them advice and. They contacted you as a specialist, but then they say, "Oh, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening."
Yeah.
Well, you contacted me, person. Remember, I'm the one that you contacted about this specialization. It's kind of like
I think medical doctors run into that too.
Oh yeah, every field goes into
every
that.
field.
IT, medicine, science. Every application, any field has that.
But the haunting is often an interpretation, and again, I'm not saying that their phenomena is not real.
Well,
you got to try. That's where the investigation part comes in.
Sure.
But sometimes they've created this because it's an easier answer than saying It's with us.
Well,
Right.
and you-
Come on, us.
yeah, and if you look at the etymology of haunting and where the root aspect of it came from, it has to deal with people. The person's haunted by the environment. They like so. In my
You
opinion,
know, haunted people.
yeah,
Yeah.
in my opinion, like the Conjuring house is an example of this. Somebody could live there, or the Amityville Horror House in Amityville, New York, or other notable places, the Hinsdale House in New York. All these places can have a person that does not believe and never experiences anything throughout their whole time of owning that house. And somehow they perish and something else moves in. And they deal with somebody experience. So that shows you that the person that is lived there is the key to why that haunting happens, the personality or the way that they carry themselves. There has to be some sort
Makes
of
me think
thing
of the house
that
in Coventry,
activates
Rhode
that
Island.
haunting.
11 years ago, I was addressing, and there was one a member of the investigating team. She was affected so profoundly by this situation, she never recovered from it.
Wow.
Now I was all right.
Yeah.
Scary moments. I was not taken over at all, but it affected one woman. See, she would talk differently, become a different person when we were driving approaching the house, and she was an educator. She was a teacher, and she would get different when she was there. But she had inner conflict, and I think this presence in that house preyed on her and brought that to the surface and gave it more impetus.
Yeah.
So she never did. It's not. I know a couple of cases where the person being affected just did not recover.
No, definitely. I think there's
a case in Baltimore, Maryland, and that applied.
Right. One of the things, myself personally, I kind of feel Hollywood and a lot of TV shows kind of embellish or give a misconception about demonology and what demons are or how they can be interpreted or when it comes to possessions and a lot of questions that we get as paranormal investigators from people from the public are, what are some of the real signs that people could look for if people were to allegedly or potentially run into a situation that may involve something like that? Because that's one of the top questions that I get often, is if there are things, like if you can make a brief list. I know there's a lot of things that you can look for as far as on a list, but if you can make a short list, guys, of what you think are the true tell signs of a potential possession or demonic case, what would those signs be?
My first question, especially if, because I have application process, I have a waiver not a waiver, a questionnaire that needs to be signed, and then if there's a group there, a case file that needs to be filled out with adequate details and of course reference points to the questionnaire and see if things are matching. But my biggest question is, especially if they are claiming demonic possession, have you seen a psychologist? If they say no, that is the first thing they must do. If they're not willing to see a psychologist, I'm not willing to help.
They must be willing to help themselves. But there are some more overt criteria that.
Well, I have more, but I think maybe we can go back and forth. You say one, I say one until we are. So maybe we do four. So
do I have to say just one?
We do two each.
Okay. Well, I would look for the more empirical signs.
Yeah.
Indications, not confirmation, that there is a sinister haunt, like something malevolent there that's preternatural. Would be strange odors. It could be the scent of roses, something strange and sweet, but an unfamiliar. But it's not a foul smell that cannot be accounted for. You can't really say what it smells like. The house suddenly growing dark. Some rooms become dark, and wow, what is that? Is it because it was bright outside? No, it's this room is getting dark. Things like that, and someone becoming withdrawn. The person that's being most affected by it, or the subject who's being affected by the haunt, becomes more withdrawn and antisocial, and a dramatic change in personality. Again, this is in tandem with the psychological evaluation, but these are some of the signs that would perhaps indicate a demonic haunt. Now you.
Well, to be honest with you, another sign that, especially exorcist, I'm not an exorcist. I am with the United States Catholic Church. But one of the things that the Catholic Church looks for, especially an exorcist, is some would say speaking in tongues, but in reality, speaking in tongues basically means speaking a different dialect that you're not well versed in.
That's really what, getting back to epistemology, that's what is the class. That's how the Bible describes it.
So,
Well, there's that, First Corinthians passage where it says, if I speak, and St. Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men or the tongues of angels, but have not love, then I am a clanging cymbal or a noisy gong. Well, that means the tongues of men mean different languages, the tongues of angels.
different dialects.
Yeah.
So with that,
Something more spurious.
I wouldn't say you could use some more modern languages in reference, like French or German or something that maybe is something that somebody that wasn't. I'm not saying this in a rude way, but of a higher intelligence that they could learn languages on the fly, then possibly as that. But when I mean languages, Sumerian, Assyrian.
Oh my word! That's something that they had not.
Very ancient languages that only professors or people with an anthropology might have studied.
At least 2 nights ago, she came out with an interesting observation about why do demons seem to shun or fear Latin. Latin being
it was a higher power language back.
It was the language of the educated back in the Renaissance.
Educated,
and earlier.
I don't mean to interrupt you guys. Just to add to that, would that also be like maybe a mockery in a way, like if it were to?
It could, but I think
because it's not spoken commonly anymore, so the demons are used to it, but it's effective when it is spoken.
Yeah, and Jesus really didn't speak Latin. He spoke Greek and Hebrew, and he mostly spoke
Arabic,
Greek actually.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the Latin is mostly could be a mockery, but also it was at that time when Latin was a prolific language, was used by the church and like the emperor and the high class.
In 1300, there was a lot of Latin around.
Oh yeah,
it was there.
But I think that it could be used as a mockery, but it also as maybe a form that, because if you really think about it, what is in the limelight is most Catholic priests are at the forefront of exorcism, even though there are other belief systems that have it, such as Judaism and Hinduism. But the Catholic Church, I believe, has more.
They have more structured,
and they handle
more established.
Well, they handle. I believe why they are more central for it is, and I misunderstood it for a long time, and I said, why did they take so long? But then I realized dealing with people's liability, so they handle it on a liability aspect as well. They try to check the boxes off before they jump to conclusions, and that is a powerful thing. So.
Well, there was that case of the priest that went to prison. I believe that was a case over in Germany. There was a movie that.
Annalise.
No, Annalise Mikel died, and then just I think about a year ago, another one died because I was working. I was assisting on a documentary with somebody that is. It's not happening anymore. The documentary with my part because the church said no, we did not help. But basically, they're trying to get this person out of Germany to aid them because you can't perform an exorcism in Germany; it is illegal. They had basically allowed him again, and then somebody else had recently just died again from them, so they banned him again. Yeah. So like Annalise Mikel died. I forgot when it was, but this case was actually connected to that case, weirdly enough. But yeah, Annalise Mikel died not due to the exorcism necessarily, but due to the rapid deterioration of her body.
It was 1982 or 83.
In the 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
One
reference is this book here. I just happened to find on James' desk. It is called Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook.
He almost forgot his own book's name. That was awesome.
Well, I had to read it off. Shadow Realms Demonology Handbook, and it's just as the name connotes. It's
written by Carl Johnson.
It's an in-the-field reference. Carl Johnson and Lana Brock, Carl L. Johnson, Lana Jan Brock authored this book, and it's certainly it's not the definitive work on demonology, but it benefits from our own experience. It's like this is where I felt I could do something better. If I had to do it over again, this is what seemed to work. And a series presented in a series of essays and case histories, and has some neat photographs in it too. So.
And which could be used in assessing a case as well. You could take some of the things that Carl have experienced, Lana has experienced, and use that. There are sources of material out there written by people like Carl and theologians that
yes,
you can use their material.
This is a book of references, and for reference.
I would do say, if you do come across somebody that you do believe is demonically possessed, do reach out to somebody like us, or do your structural research at the library, not just Wikipedia and stuff like that. But there are people that you can reach out to. The one thing I also want to say to people that might be dealing with an issue: be careful on how you reach out to. This is not like a licensed field. People that are doing it for the right reason, in my opinion, don't charge people. So also watch out for that. People do take advantage and prey on the weak.
Yeah.
And that could be because they are inducing a spiritual battle, or they are mentally weak and they are being preyed on in that way.
Personally, while our epistemology is kind of in sync here, we might differ in the sense of our cosmologies. I don't necessarily embrace the concept that angels and demons are duking it out over the souls of men.
Well, that's dualism, though.
Yeah, that's a form of dualism there.
Yeah.
You know what I like in there? I like that 2 chapters especially. I was a teenage Satanist, and beware those dolls, chapter 23.
He was a Satanist, people. So
Well,
everybody knows
book,
about demons. It's this man Carl,
I would
and
say,
that even has its misconceptions too. See, people have misconceptions.
I didn't like that when I was a Satanist. People got a bad,
Well, you guys were notorious.
So I mean,
they were rebels.
They were rebels. I'm rebellious, but I'm not wicked. You know what they call me. Just because
LaVey didn't create that religion because it was all hocus pocus. It was because he wanted to be rebellious.
You can call it humanism with window dressing, really.
Nice.
The philosophies.
How do you guys feel about also I remember James when James took me under his wing when I learned about demonology from him and others. Body language, I think, is really important too. Like what Carl was saying with the case that he did with the little boy. I think body language is a key thing in telltale signs.
Yes.
You definitely can. I think somebody really doesn't understand is when you're dealing with a person that is under a transient possession at that point in time. Especially when you're a demonic case in general, I don't care if you're clairsentient, clairvoyant. You don't have to distinguish with any abilities. If you are on a true demonic case, once you hit that property, once you hit within that homestead, I think there is a fundamental atmospheric change that happens, and you feel that within your solar plex and within your body, and your fight flight chemicals start to happen. Should I be here? Should I not be here? Like Carl said. And I think that is things that happen, not in the body fashion, but also I think the biggest thing too when somebody's under transient possession is if the person that is dictating everything, they won't look at you in the eyes. They'll look right through you, and you can feel that feeling. I don't care if you think they're looking at you directly. They are staring right through who you are. They are analyzing.
And you get a feel for that, do you? Sense
You do, and that's body language too, because you can see them and their stare, their tunnel vision. And it just creates
a distance.
I'm watching you, James.
It's scary though. I've dealt with it, not many times, but the times that I've even in some attachment cases when the person is unknowingly channeling, and that's usually how an attachment, if something speaks, the person unknowingly channels. But even in a channeling session, I've experienced the straight perception, like that a person is looking through you, and you feel that. It's not the person anymore. But there is, I believe, a difference between, of course, a channeling attachment and demonic possession. But it is a creepy feeling, and it's unnerving.
Unnerving and unnatural.
Yeah. All right. So, in your experience, guys, how many cases would you say in your lifetime up to this current point of time how many cases of possession cases have you ran into?
Evaluate as demonic or possession. Possession twice that I was sure of it. What we could call, again, lacking scientific nomenclature. I was involved in 2 cases that really seemed to be demonic possession or invasive spirit takeover. 2 for me.
3 possessions for me, and I would say 5 demonic cases of infestation or possession, and I would say 2 that are questionable. Maybe infestation, maybe small levels of oppression, but just not enough data to conclude on it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I would say 3 possession cases myself.
Wow.
So that's how rare it is. 47 years, 15 years. It just shows you that it's not like a bag of popcorn every time. Every kernel's a bean that pops.
Right.
I could say 3, but it wasn't under the purview of a paranormal investigation. An early case or a situation of takeover by a spirit I experienced when I was conducting a magic ritual back, when I was a Luciferian, a form of Satanism. One of the participants suddenly was taken over by a very malevolent spirit. At least that's what it seemed to be. And strange things were happening in that ritual chamber when that occurred. So, say I've observed 3.
They said some crazy things have happened at the locations Aleister Crowley did his magic. So I can only imagine, man. I've never dabbled. I do know a lot of the rituals for magic, but I've never practiced them, never will. But I can only imagine the intention that is put into that, and what is laid within those grounds afterwards. Like I could imagine, what's his name?
The intent. Yeah.
Page from Led Zeppelin that bought the house on Loch Ness, and he said that this
Bolstein Castle.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
And then that place.
Jimmy Page purchased that. Right on the
Jimmy Page, yeah. And he was a Book of Lost fanatics. Hey, you know what the crazy thing is too? A lot of people don't remember, and I think it's crazy cult religion, but Scientology. Rupert, whatever, Hubbard, right? Is it Hubbard?
Hubbard.
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 Hubbard was an Aleister Crowley gangbuster. He was a Book of Law fanatic.
Well, I think L. Ron Hubbard, he authored
a
series of comic books, illustrated novels or novelettes, and I think he decided eventually to make that into a religion.
Well, there was alleged information that he led a cult, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Who, Crowley?
No, Hubbard.
Oh yeah, Hubbard learned from the best. Crowley, man, didn't come sane until he was 72 years old when he had he was maybe younger when he had a son.
Who interviewed L. Ron Hubbard? H.P. Lovecraft, the renowned horror fiction writer from Providence, Rhode Island, interviewed him because he was a literalist, a literary person, starting to author horror stories, and he went to H.P. Lovecraft for advice. Excuse me.
It's the chocolates, man. They're doing it to me too. It's the nuts.
And
nuts in your mouth.
Yeah. And after that interview, H.P. Lovecraft said, "That young man is going places."
Wow. I'm glad you guys brought James had brought up doing rituals and kind of like witchcraft kind of thing. That was actually one of my questions during the show tonight. I wanted your guys' impression on what you guys think of the young folk or inexperienced folk, because that's another question I get a lot at public events, is what we think about those who kind of dabble in that. Again, in my personal opinion, I think you're inviting something that you don't know what you're inviting or dealing with, because like James said, it's all about the intent and what you do with that. And the other thing I was going to bring up is, how do you feel about Ouija boards? Because that's another thing that gets brought up a lot also. And I feel that Ouija boards can kind of become a conduit for something to attach itself to, or the person, because you're inviting something in.
So, I think with when it comes to ritual magic or root work or certain things like Crowley's that aspect of magick and then magic, and overall witchcraft, there's a lot of misconceptions, even as a Catholic, and I think some Catholics would be rolling around in their house right now with holding the rosaries and crucifix and Hail Marys, but you don't
mind inviting some controversy.
No, well, I truly believe that if there is positivity to something, like everybody misunderstands witchcraft, neo-paganism of Wicca. Wicca's neo-paganism.
Except for the neo-paganists, they understand it.
But even some Wiccans don't. But even a lot of people don't realize, with culture, witchcraft, they have the threefold rule. What you do comes back to you threefold. So if it's bad, it comes back to you threefold. If you do good,
karma.
It comes back threefold. Well, karma is of Hinduistic belief, which is the oldest modern day religion, 4,000 years old, which comes from animism, which is older over 10,000 years old, which is almost the brunt of the religion. So there's so many different things. You know, people misunderstand voodoo, and you know, voodoo is actually there's Haitian voodoo and there's voodoo. One's actually a religion and one's root magic. One is the religion, which is actually Christian based. They believe in God, but they do different practices within their belief. So people misunderstand these misconceptions. So people can dabble as long as it's for good, great. But there is intent. There are people that dabble for the wrong reason. And yeah, you can tell people not to do it, but in any token of life, outside the paranormal, inside the paranormal, if you tell somebody not to do something, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do it. So I think the best thing, of course, somebody like myself that's never performed a magic ritual of any sort, maybe besides some candle magic I've done, I'm well familiar with like the go-letter and all these certain things. And you know, there's some people that would become familiar in a physical aspect and do it just to see what would occur from it. But I'm not timid to do so. I don't want to open a door if it's possible.
Right.
Because I know it's intent based. If I have an intent that I'm going to open a door, there is a possibility I'm going to do it because I have the intent right there in my mind that there could be a possibility.
Right.
So I stay away from it.
Yeah.
As far as the Ouija board, it is a divination tool, and a lot of people don't understand the Ouija board history, especially with Kennard Novelty Company, Elijah Bond,
The originators of
William Fold, Isaac Fold. People don't know the board history. Everybody calls it the Ouija board, but they don't remember that it wasn't just the Ouija board. It was the spiritual board. It was the Fold board. There was different boards back then. The Ouija was the most famous, of course. And
sometimes with a glass in the
yeah.
center of a table.
And then eventually bought by Parker Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Parker Brothers, fascinating. The William Fold, fascinating game.
But I do believe that the spirit board has been around for a long time. It was used in spiritualism before, of course, it became popular.
But you don't like them.
Well, I'll get to the reason why in a second. But it was used. It was in some culture in pagan tribes of Britain. It was used in China in some capacity in forms not like the Ouija board, and it was in forms and used in Egyptian times in communication with spirits. It is a spirit communication device. That's why spiritualists used it. The reason I don't like it, and you could say, and I had the same argument, or I would say this argument people have is if you're recording something, you're still activating communication. Yes, that itself is dangerous, but what makes a spirit board more dangerous, in my opinion, is that you're making a physical representation too. You're using the planchette as a communication device, and you are asking spirit to also touch the planchette. So you're asking spirit to get into your personal bubble, your protective bubble, your bioenergetic field, or whatever.
Bioelectric
field, yeah.
Real official term.
Well, not a real official term, but still, you're asking something to come into your presence, into your, and possibly even touch you to move the planchette. So that's dangerous because you're allowing something to enter your bubble. With a spirit recording, you can put the recorder in the center of the room and tell them to go to that red dot, and it's at the center of the room. It's not near you. So, but you are still trying to communicate with something. So it's still dangerous, but I think there are further dangers when it comes to a physical aspect. When you're using yourself, like I don't condone channeling. Some people do. I don't feel like it's proper to have something enter your body that you don't know, because even though it could tell you that I am this, what happens if it's lying to you? And lying tactics, and you allow it to control you.
I can channel one person. I can channel my twin brother Keith. So Keith, what's your impression of Ouija boards? I think you're not too keen on it.
Well, no, I don't agree with the usage of a Ouija board, because when you are using a Ouija board, you are essentially surrendering part of your body.
Yeah.
You're giving over part of your body to a spirit. You're inviting the spirit to take over.
Well, how do you feel about dowsing rods? These, divining rods are pretty harmless.
Again, no, that's surrendering part of your body. And you're giving in, you're saying, I give the spirit permission to take over and transmit a message. So no, I stringently warn people not to experiment with these things.
Keith, would it surprise you to know that I have played with a Ouija board even within the last year?
No, Carl, that doesn't surprise me at all. It does not surprise me.
So now you got 3 guys. You got Keith Johnson on for a little while.
But no, in all
That's a pretty darn good Keith.
in all seriousness,
That was
though,
pretty good.
to give Carl his opinion on it in a second is I will say that one time the spirit board or the talking board, whatever terminology you want to use for it, was a piece of the puzzle for a case. Only one time.
Is that famous one upon which The Exorcist was predicated? Is that the one you?
No, I'm not talking about Reagan, but no, one personal case that I dealt with.
The
The Ouija, it wasn't a demonic case, but the Ouija board was a piece of the what was a catalyst. It wasn't helpful that they were dealing with something they attempted communication, and that was the catalyst of why it amplified.
Yeah, and while Ouija boards and spirit boards don't particularly intimidate me, they're a tool for experimentation, I think. But
Right.
for me,
Yeah.
I addressed one case, and this was that situation where a young lady did not recover from the influence.
Mm.
A complex explanation. But the subject, the lady of the house, she was from the Azores, from Portugal, and she, I mean, do you talk about the perfect battery for a haunting? She and her sister owned 10 Ouija boards.
Mhm.
7 of them were lost. 3 of them they burned, which is not advisable. It angers
don't burn.
it angers the spirit in theory. And plus, this couple that lived in Coventry, Rhode Island, they had 7 children. It's 8 now. They had 7 children. They were what would be a good term? They were incendiary because they would argue. They would get in these terrific fights over jealousy usually, and then they would have make-up intimacy. Then they'd be fighting again a day later, and the kids are swarming around. I was thinking
Sounds very turmoilous.
yeah, tumultuous. It's surprising that it would be surprising if there wasn't a haunting. And then on Christmas Day, this was in 2008, 2007 to 2008. This lady of the house, her brother came over and he said, "Oh, I don't think your house is haunted. I don't see anything moving around." So, "Oh no, well, watch this." And she started to tell the spirit to move something for him. And I'll tell you, in that house, it was one of those rare instances where we, the investigative team, entered the house and we saw things flying around. This is the poltergeist case. Things were sugar bowls, crockery flying around in front of us. Usually it's like, oh, all hell broke loose after you guys left. Now we were seeing this. It was happening. It was a very real haunting. But again, you had this perfect psychic battery. You know, you had all this division in the marriage and this tension.
So was it psychokinesis? Yeah, was it
Well, it had a personality, and I
Yeah.
actually saw the spirit in the house.
Did you?
That's the last time I saw an actual manifestation that looked like a human being and then vanished.
Mm.
You know, so it's an interesting case. I wish I had more documentation. I have a couple of pictures from those days. From the
Wow.
investigation.
Crazy. All right, we are well past the hour that
We have past our bedtime.
should we start talking about Platonism and dualism?
we can.
That's interesting evolution. Yeah.
What's great about this subject is that we can go like so long and like
It's paranormal. We could go into dawn, you know.
we-
We haven't even touched on cryptozoology
Or aliens.
Yeah, we got to talk about aliens next
Yeah,
time.
how aliens became famous during the science fiction boom. Yeah. let's talk about
Coincidence? I think
Coincidence.
not. Yeah.
yeah,
Let
but
me ask you a question, Matt, if I may. Would you consider yourself a demonologist in formation? Are you headed that way? It's the title. I mean, you can embrace it or not.
Yeah.
But are you a demonologist, or do you think you will be?
who me?
Yes, you.
Me? No. I don't think I don't think I'm an experienced enough in that area to say
Well, you can study, or you could be. There's the study and there's the applicable aspect of it.
The
right.
application of demonology.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, it found me. I just seemed to be contacted about the darker cases until one time somebody brought a magazine article. They said, "Carl, you're in this article." Oh, am I? And it said Carl Johnson, the demonologist.
Right.
So I thought, hey, why not? It has a ring to it.
Right.
Okay, I'm a demonologist.
Right. I just honestly, like for me, I didn't think of it as a calling to learn it. I just felt that if I'm gonna take a group of people that I care about that I investigate with, and when we help people, that God forbid we ever run into a situation where we think there could be a potential situation, that I just wanted to kind of go into that area to learn enough of where I can apply myself, which I've talked about this with James in many private conversations, where that's why I wanted to become part of the Dominion ministry and kind of learn that aspect of things, because I wanted to be able to help those people and guide them to people that could help them, so that I could watch for the signs and learn about the things that where God forbid we were in that situation, because I would want to know how to help those people, because if I don't know how to help those people, I got to guide them and direct them to the proper help that they need.
Definitely, and that's what more investigators need to do, because I think knowledge is not everything. I think love is everything, but knowledge is very powerful. And
you
if
get
we
back
don't,
to 1 Corinthians 13.
if we don't learn something new every day, then we're doing something wrong.
Right.
Life is meant to learn, and there's every day, every second you can learn something new.
Right. Right, because I would just feel terrible that if I cannot help that family, and I don't want to give them
help a family,
right.
And that also comes with time. I used to be very upset myself. Why can't I help this family? But sometimes you just can't.
Sometimes it's just
That's also part of it too.
It's too complicated.
Sometimes
the person's not helping themselves.
Yeah, sometimes it comes with time. We're not perfect. I learn every day something new.
Case of a lady in Baltimore, Maryland, and another one in Rhode Island. And she lived in Narragansett, Rhode Island. They were not reclaimed.
Yeah.
And I think it was the paranormal influence. It's especially in retrospect. But
I think he said, are we wrapping up, Matt?
Yeah,
we about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, it was like a half hour ago, but
well, I'm gonna do a quick not an announcement, but a little tease for people that are listening on your show, and you get it. You can go to massparacon.com right now. There is a teasing advertisement out there right now. But in August there'll be a huge announcement made that will be historic.
In the annals of the paranormal, I would say yes.
So look forward to August, and look forward to that in August, and it'll be announced.
So just check back with us. Look through. Will this appear primarily?
Everybody involved will be tagged.
Facebook hasn't been disbanded and shut down by then. I don't think it will.
There's over 1 billion users on Facebook. I doubt it's going to go anywhere anytime soon.
So, guys, how can people reach out to you if they need to? What things do you have coming up that you'd like to share other than your big announcement? You have any events or anything you'd like to give a quick shout out to anybody?
Have become virtual. We've got something coming up next weekend after this one.
The following weekend, 24th to
24th.
Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. Are you going to be there?
No, unfortunately, I'm not going this year.
That's coming up on. If this had been 4 months ago, we'd be saying, "Well, we're going to be here and there and all a few places." It's what comes up, and we'll announce at the time what's going to open up. We are starting a book together.
Nice, congrats.
Which we haven't announced either until you just.
Well, it's going to be a long time in coming, so I think it will be.
It's an academia. It's going to be a more academia book than more books than people are used to. It's going to be more academia based and towards the legitimization of demonology.
Yeah, we're pushing that to be a legitimate study. Yeah. Take it out of the dark, although it has its origins in the Middle Ages. Bring it into the 21st century. Combine the ancient arcane wisdom and experience and put it under the modern spectrum, of light, subjected to it.
Hey, every myth and folklore comes from a truth, right?
Yeah. So that's it's our ongoing crusade for duodemonology,
which is our group.
Yeah. And I'm also with Paranormal Paranormal, with which James is associated, and that's directed by Elise Gianmarco Carlson. So get in touch with us. You can always find us on the ubiquitous Facebook. We're there. We have a page, and Duodemonology does, and Panorama Paranormal does. We go back to that charming house from time to time in Harrisville, Round Top Farmhouse. I have an engagement coming up there this weekend, and James
maybe next weekend.
We'd like to think we'll see you there.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be at the Conjuring. I call it the Conjuring House just because of the movie, but it just sticks in my head for some reason.
I call it too, and I've known about the house as long as I know Carl. So.
Yeah, and I did a television episode it was filmed in March, and I did one in October with Ghost Adventures, and that was aired on Halloween night.
Right.
Well, I actually filmed it in August of last year, and we filmed another one in March. I can't really say too much about it because it's pending. It's been filmed, but will it be released with the delays and everything? We don't know. We'd like to think so.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I hope everybody enjoyed our guests. I know I did, guys. I hope you had fun on the show.
Definitely. We'd love to be back on.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again because again, this topic, the paranormal topic, but demonology, all of it, you need really like several hours of time to really dwell.
Yeah, that's why you simply must have us back. Maybe we'll take more questions next time. Hopefully there'll be more questions.
Yeah.
Rattling off our own.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to go ahead and give a couple of shout outs to the people in the chat room. I want to just really thank them for their questions in the chat. Brad M, shout out to him. Shout out to Ganyok Paranormal. We're in there. Intuitive April, she's our team psychic. She is in there as well. A couple other people. Guys, thank you for chatting in the chat room, throwing those questions up for our guests and the host as well. Again, guys, next week I'm not going to have a show because I'm very fortunate to actually do an investigation at the farmhouse on Round Top Road in Rhode Island, which is famously known as the Conjuring House. I'm hoping to see James and maybe even Carl Johnson if he's willing to come out and hang out with us for a little while. That'd be great. Maybe Friday night.
We're supposed to get dinner for Friday, right?
Yeah, Friday night, July 17th, I believe. So we're going up there July 16th. So I'm not going to have a live show next week, guys. So, but the following week, I'm going to have Mr. Bingo Minerva as my next big guest. Bingo is from the new hit show on the History Channel from a show called Lost Gold of World War II. So if you're into treasure hunting, it's one of those popular treasure hunting shows that are on the History Channel. And the new season just ended. So they're not doing any filming right now. I'm not sure what they're doing currently as far as the show with all the pandemic going on and everything. I'm sure put things on hold. But Bingo Minerva is going to be on the Strange Oddities podcast July 23rd. July 30th, I'm going to have Miss Katie Elizabeth, Champ researcher. If you guys ever heard of America's Loch Ness Monster, Lake Champ is...
I know who you mean. A friend of mine, actually.
Yeah, I know you guys are familiar with her and know her. She's going to be on the Strange Oddities podcast on July 30th. That's going to be a really great show. I can't wait to have her. I'm excited. I think that's it, guys. Any last words, or should I say any last rites?
If you have a situation, please last rites. I like that. Give us a call. Consult us. We may be able to advise or at least assess.
Yeah, please reach out. Don't hesitate. And hope everybody has a good night. And if you are going to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, we'll both be there. So we hope to see you there.
One weekend only in the Gettysburg Bash.
Right. All right. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and play my exit song here. If you'd like to stay on the call with me after the show, we'll say our goodbye. And then, guys, I have a new exit song here and stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You got a new song? You're debuting a new goodbye song?
A new exit song, kind of. So everybody gets a little taste of it. Tonight will be the premiere of my exit. I've been working on it for a while, so it's not much. It's just, information about the show, the website, how you guys can contact me. Basically, I am offering free advertisement on my show. If you guys are interested, contact me, Strange Oddities podcast at gmail.com. And if you're interested in free advertisement during my show, I'm offering like a few seconds of commercial advertising. If you have like something that you want to promote out there, a product, whatever that's in the paranormal related, pertaining to, or it's a great opportunity, I think, for people. It's a win-win for me, win-win for you, kind of thing. So I'm gonna have that on there as well. Guys, I'll say my goodbyes after I play this, and just stay on with me. And I want to wish everybody a great night. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on July 23rd is when we return live. All right, every Thursday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube. All right, thanks, guys. Have a great night, and I'll play my new exit scene here. All right, here we go.